What's up, guys? I'm Chris Midlet on all my socials, and in this tutorial, I'm going to be showing you how to create this cool volume displacement effect in Octane and Cinema 4D. I've been wanting to do this tutorial for a long time, and I finally got a chance to put it down. It's a two-part tutorial, and in the first part, I'm going to be introducing you to all the different tools and techniques and little sort of technical bits that you're going to need to know to be able to do this effect. And in the second part of the tutorial, I'll just be doing a demonstration where I'll build an example just like the ones you're looking at from beginning to end. So like and subscribe if you like this content and you want to see more of it. I'm really just getting started on my sort of YouTube journey. So any kind of love with likes, comments, and all that stuff will be greatly appreciated. And hopefully you can curry me some favor with the algorithmic overlords of YouTube. I'd really appreciate it. So yep, that's about it. Let's jump in. All right, so here we are in Cinema 4D 2023.2.2. At the time of me making this, 2024 just came out, but none of the plugins work with that yet, so we're going to be using 2023. So just to get things started, let's just start with a torus. Something like this. And for the record, the old way that I did this, the images that I showed in the beginning of this video were not done the way that I'm going to be showing you how to do it now. The way I'm going to be showing you how to do it now is better and faster and easier to work with. But just so you know, the old way of doing this was using the volume builder, and then you can put an Octane object tag directly on that and change that to voxel. Then you can add a volume medium, and yeah, and then you can just render this directly in Octane. The problem with this is that you have to, like, once you want to get up to really smaller voxel sizes, you have to change this in the viewport. Not here, but in here. And obviously it's not going to do anything for just this torus, but if you have a complex model, this is really going to slow down your viewport. Like in the examples that I showed before, I basically had to work with this in the really, like with the voxel size really low, and then just or really high in this case, and then just bump it down just for rendering. Otherwise, I just basically can't move anything in the viewport. It's a little, it gets kind of crashy and unstable. So this way that I'm going to show here is a lot better because Octane, since I made those images, added the feature of just being able within the Octane object tag to just set this to mesh to volume, which basically does the same thing. And you can have a very simple mesh and very fast viewport while also having small voxels. So let's just make a light. It's just a Octane daylight system, and kick off a render so you can see what we got. So we just got this very simple little foggy thing. So let's go in here and start to tweak this. We haven't made a medium yet, so you can add the volume medium. And then so we've got something like this. Right now the voxel size is set to 4, so you can see that we can bring that down to, let's say, what does 2 look like? Let's leave it at 2 for now. And all right, so just got this, just the volume in here. So let's jump in to this volume medium. And you can see we've got these different tabs right here. So we've got displacement, absorption, scattering, emission. We'll twirl down displacement, and we can add this OSL displacement. Now, originally, you're going to see that nothing happens. So you have to jump in here. If we come in here right now, this will be over here, and you can start to tweak these parameters. personally, I like to do this inside of here, inside the Octane node editor. So let's just spread this stuff out a little bit. And so you can see we've got this OSL texture node that's plugged into displacement. It's got this stuff and some basic values for absorption and scattering. Absorption is going to kind of just be like the overall color of the volume. So you can see it's got this dark gray, and this is dark gray. If we switch this to, let's say, like a red, it's red. The scattering is the scattering within the volume. I don't really want to get into explaining all these sorts of things in this tutorial. I kind of want to just like stay on topic. But yeah, if we switch this to something like red, it's going to be more red. Hopefully you know what absorption and scattering are, or there's a bunch of other stuff, information out there to dig into that. Let's stay on task. So anyway, so you got this OSL texture node. And if we start to tweak some of these parameters, I'm just going to dock this over here for right now. If we grab the amount, so you can see it's not doing anything because the amount of displacement is set to 0. So if we start crank that up, we'll get some displacement. We can go past what this slider will let us do. So we can put in, say, like 15. And we've got some displacement. We can take our frequency and start to increase that. And so one of the really good things about using this just on the Octane tag set to mesh to volume, this is just really fast. You can get really fast and interactive preview of what you're doing. You don't really need to sort of wonder what these different sliders do, because you can just see what they do when you adjust them. And you get really fast performance and feedback. So just looking at this, you can see what all these guys do. And so now we've got something like that. But if we look close, you're going to see a few problems. So you can see that this just completely flattens out at the top and at the bottom. And ideally what we'd want is for this displacement to be happening all over the place and not have these flat areas. It kind of works from some angles, but then it'll just kind of like break at different angles. And typically you're going to want this to just be a 3D all over the place effect. So I learned a few tricks messing around with this. So one of them is if we take our torus and let's make a few other objects. I'm going to make a couple of cubes and grab both of those and scale them down to be pretty small. And let's grab one and bring it up here. You can see it right there. And grab the other one and let's bring it down here. And if we create a connect object, turn off weld, and I'm just going to drag everything into this connect object and take this Octane tag and drop it on the connect object. And so you can see we've got like these little cloudlets up here and down here. But also what you can see is that fixed our issue of this flattening out. So then what we can do is just take these cubes and bring their scale pretty much all the way down to not 0, but about like 1. And that's pretty much going to make them disappear. Or I think let's see this one. You might need to give it a little bit more. Oops. Boom. Okay. And so even at 2, they still basically disappear, but they're sort of just like expanding the bounding box of the volume. This does make all of this slower. So I don't know this, but the way that I think this is working is, as I said, I think it's sort of like expanding the bounding box on this. So I think that the best way to use this to keep it as fast as possible is not to just have this, up here as high as it can go, because I think you're probably creating more voxels. So just use it as far as you need it. Oh, that's interesting. Being a little twitchy. That's new. But anyway, so just drag it until it works. This is the behavior I'm expecting, not that popping on and popping off, but this, where you can kind of do this just until you get as much displacement, until it stops cutting it off, stops clipping, and then you can stop dragging it. Okay. So that's the uber basics. So let's take this a little bit farther. So if we jump back in here and let's go back to our node editor. So this is the default. I'm just going to pause this while I do this. So this is the default OSL Octane displacement. This is basically what it can do, but you are definitely not limited to this, and I pretty much don't ever actually use this one. So let's disconnect this one and come down here and add just a normal Cinema 4D noise. And basically what you can do is you can drop this in here, and then you have the full flexibility of all the awesome noises that come with Cinema 4D and everything that they can do. So if we click re-render on this, you're going to notice that we lost everything. So it looks like nothing's happening again. So there's a couple of things that you're going to need to change in order for this to work. So for one, you're going to need to change this from texture space to world space. And if you look closely, it did change a little bit, but it's still basically not really doing anything. So the issue there is that you need a controller to basically be able to control the intensity of the displacement. And so what you're going to use for that is under OSL, under utils, you're going to grab this multiplier node and drop that here. And if we start to crank that up, you can see that we still aren't really, it's getting a little bit bumpy in there, but still not much. So another thing that you're going to need to do is in this little OSL script, just make a little modification and change the max value. You can see that the max value here is 2. Change that to a much higher number. So let's change that to like 100. And then let's recompile this. So now you can see our slider got a lot bigger. And so if we start to crank this up, we can actually get our displacement to look more interesting. So let's come in here. Let's do a different thing. Let's do electrics and maybe change the global scale to say like 250. And you can see that we're getting something that looks pretty cool. Now, something to keep in mind is that you will still get that flatness at the top and bottom. I still have the 2 cubes in here, but that issue will work no matter if you use the Cinema 4D noise or if you're using the default one. But since those same cubes are still here, it looks like it's working nicely. Let me just make sure this one. Yeah, so this one can come down a little bit lower. And maybe this one, it is flattening out, can come a little bit higher. All right, so now this is what we've got. It's fully 3D. You can see we've got a flat backside over here. So then we can do the same thing. Just take this one, this cube, and pull it over here. And that'll fix that. And if you've got any more issues, like this side over here is flat, so let's just take the other cube that's at the bottom and drag that over here, and then that'll fix that. Typically, you can get it all working with just two of these, like I say, kind of like bounding box expanders. Um, Depending on the complexity of the mesh that you use as the initial input, you might need to add more. Just keep in mind that adding more is going to slow things down. But you can see that right now we're still moving and grooving, still doing pretty good. Okay, so this is, again, this is kind of like the uber basics, but, one step further. Big takeaways are you can use whatever noise you want. You just need this multiplier node because this is the thing that's going to actually allow you to increase how much displacement you're getting and, actually get things to look really cool. Okay, so that's that. So now, as we want to take this and take things a little bit further and get a little bit more complex, we're going to talk about mixing displacements. So just as we've got something like this, we can, of course, take this, grab another noise. Let's do a Luca. And let's grab where are you? A mix. Okay, so we're gonna just grab this, put it in here, grab this, put it in here. And in the amounts, we'll just actually make another one of these. And let's just add the regular noise. And I'm going to clamp this down a bit, maybe like that. It's where it's pretty harsh. And we'll put that in the amount. Again, making sure that these are all in world space. Since I made these as duplicates of the one that I already have, they're all already in world space. And so now if we take this and we're going to pipe all this mixing through this same multiplication node. And let's make some adjustments. It's not super obvious. Let's maybe get something that looks really different. And let's change the global scale on this one again, just so to make this more apparent. Let's put it down to like 80. And you can start to see it. Let's take our noise here and let's put this up to like 500. Okay. And I mean, you can see it, but I'm trying to make it a little bit more obvious. But basically, we've got two noises, and then we are mixing them with this noise as a mask. So that's going to be really important for creating the final look that I showed at the beginning, is mixing noises together and then using other noises as a mask. Before I move on to the next thing, let's maybe see if we can make this a little bit more obvious. Let's see what else we've got. Let's there we go. So it was a little bit too much weighted towards the other noise. So let's find something kind of in the middle. Here we go. This is it. This was really the issue. All right, so now you can really see this mix happening. So if you've ever really done much of anything, with Cinema 4D noises. I mean, I just did this with 2 noises, but obviously you can just go on forever when you start to blend and mix noises together. And this becomes really, really powerful, flexible, and you can take it pretty far. Okay, so that's another concept introduced, basically, to get that we're going to need as one of the building blocks to create that ultimate effect. Is that you got to be able to mix noises, you got to be able to mask noises, and you got to pipe all that through. I didn't mention this as I did it, but this multiply node should be sort of like at the end of the chain, right before it gets plugged into the displacement. Okay, so another thing, with what we've done so far, we've mapped these. We're basically using these 3D noise textures to do the displacement. But we don't have to use that. We could basically use just about anything. So in the examples that I showed at the beginning, I'm actually using a projected texture as a displacement source. So let's come in here. Let's grab an image texture. Where are you at? Right here. And I'm just going to come in here and grab this guy. Just kind of like this swirly paint, which is one of the ones that I used. Okay, so we're going to grab this. And so we've already got this. So first off, let's create a camera really quick. It's going to jump into that camera. And I'm going to take this and drop this into the absorption and into the scattering. And initially, this is going to be applied in UV space, which we don't want. We want this to be projected through our camera. So let's take this and do perspective. And then let's drop in our camera. And so you can see that we get something like this. One thing we can also do is let's go and add a color correction node to the scattering in between there. And let's adjust the gamma so this is a little brighter. We can increase the saturation. Yeah, let's go this way. That's what we want. Do it. Let's not do that. And of course, we can change the hue. We can tweak and play with this as much as we want. But let's leave the hue alone, actually, so we can still get all of our color variation. Let's see, what if we drop this in here also? How's that look? Sure, whatever. And also, of course, we can do a transform and adjust the scale. And hopefully, this is all. Let's not get carried away with this part. But what you can see is that now we've colored this with a texture, and we're just looking through our camera with this. But what else we can do, let's grab a Octane gradient, and I'm just going to take this and pipe this through here to essentially just kind of convert this into a grayscale map and have something where I can control the black to white values. And now we're going to take this. Let's just duplicate this mix texture. Drop this in here. We'll drop this one in here. And we can take another noise texture. And let's just change it to something else. Maybe this turbulence. And we're going to use that as the mix amount, and then drop this into here, which you can see now we'll use this projection as an additional displacement. So what's really cool about this is that the displacement is going to match the image. So you can see that where this is purple, it's pushing it out more. So we can come in here and we can sort of clamp this. Actually, we want this to go maybe the other way. Just kidding. Nope, I do want this to go this way. Maybe just don't take it too far. Yeah, something like that. And if we go into our multiplier and bump this up, it's at like 35 right now. Let's go to 60. And you can see we start to get a lot of detail in here. Let's just totally overdrive it. And let's say, let's go all the way up to 100 and just see what that does. Okay, we get something like this. Looks pretty cool. By the way, we can take this this script and we can modify it more if we want it to go over 100. Just increase the max past 100, and it you can take it as far as you want. So you can see that we can really push this. And if I jump out of this camera, and I'm actually going to undock this so we can kind of get a good look at what's going on. You can see that we've got like a lot of really awesome and small little details. And we can totally change this up because this is being masked. You can see that it's only showing up in certain areas, and it's being masked by this noise. So by tweaking the seed of this noise, I'm just going to do that off screen, we can get a totally different effect. So you can just keep on messing with the seed and get different patterns. Obviously, also, this initial mix is being mixed with this noise, so we can adjust the seed here and get different levels of mix. Now, originally, you remember I had this and it was kind of clamped too far this way, and so that was weighting it too much towards the what is that? That's not the Voronoi, the electrics. So let's actually just do that on purpose now, so we can get more of the electric, because I kind of like that better. And you can see we get some really interesting and cool looking effects. We could take this texture and let's say we could drop an Octane gradient in here. And we can just we could remap these colors to whatever we want. Let's just add in a rainbow. Throw that in scattering. And you can see that we've got lots and lots of control that looks super ugly, but hopefully you get the point of what you could do by taking your time and actually making something pretty. Maybe get the darkest darks out of there. So still too dark. So hopefully you get the idea. Eventually this might start looking kind of complex, but if you follow along, you can see it's actually not that complex. It's pretty simple, actually. One thing to note and be aware of is that This is just this displacement is being projected along the camera axis. So this isn't really a super, like a totally 3D effect in the displacement. If we go around this, I guess another thing is to show is how this is like still pretty snappy and fast, which is really cool. But we can go around this and you can see that it's like the displacement is, sort of, I guess whenever you do any kind of camera displacement, you're getting that effect. Like if you're done camera displacement, just like with an image for, like matte painting or something like that, you get that like smearing, you will have that. So just be aware of that this kind of is meant, this works better for like still images versus animations. But depending on the angle, you can, depending on the angle and the composition, even, you can get it to work. You just don't want to move the camera too much. But you can definitely get things to work pretty well, even not directly in the camera view that you project it down. Probably stay in the ballpark of the camera that you projected it down, though. I think that's when you'll get the best effects. So I just did this with, let's just pause this. I just did this with a very simple piece of geometry. But if we just take this and let's say we just copy that, let's not copy the whole thing. I just want to copy the torus. And let's just do something with this. This is all, what's really cool is that this is all still totally procedural, very easy to modify. We're still dealing with like super simple geometry. Let's do something like that. And since this is all just in this connect object, you can see we get it all will just work. If let's jump in our camera. And you can see what you get. Get lots of cool detail. Lots of sort of like high fidelity detail in the image displacement, which is how I did those images that I showed in the beginning. But yeah, like I said, if you just kind of stay in the ballpark of your projection angle, then you can still just get lots of detail. And then, of course, I haven't actually gone into making any sort of adjustments to the material for the volume. I did this at 2 centimeters for the voxel size, but we can easily go down and things will be typically still pretty good. One thing to be aware of is that the larger the voxel size, the smaller the impact of the displacement. So what you don't want to do is have like really large voxels and get the displacement looking how you want it to look, and then try and go to a much smaller displacement. It's going to completely change the look. I think just in that, just with that change that we just did, going from, in voxels, going from 2 to 1 is kind of a big jump. But yeah, we have a very different look at it. It looks a lot less intense in terms of how much is being displaced. So if we come back in here, let's go into our multiply. Let's change this to, that is not in the right spot. What did I just do? Okay, I'm just making sure I got all the brackets and everything. Right. So let's put this to, I don't know, let's do 170. See what it looks like. And yeah, you see, we can get back to kind of where we were with this, just, in terms of the amount of displacement that we had going on. Let's jump out of here. So you can see that this would be good for like, nebulas and stuff like that. Obviously, I've just got some really super basic lighting in here, but if you had just individual lights in here, do something with more interesting geometry, all that sort of stuff, you can take this pretty far and do a lot of stuff. Something else to mention is that obviously I'm using all these noises. You can animate these and get some really cool effects that way. One thing to be mindful of is that the animations are not going to show up in the live viewer. And I think it's because it's the way that Octane works with those noises is that it's baking them. So it needs to sort of like bake the texture. I think that's what's going on. I don't know that that's what's going on, but it doesn't work in the live viewer, the animation. You have to refresh the renderer to see that happening. I don't really want to do that right now. Let me think. Is there anything else? That's the gist of the effect. I guess this probably doesn't really need to be said, but obviously any sort of things that you do to the mesh, like these are like very simple. So let's just add a bit of geometry here, and then let's add a displacer. Oops. Here, add noise. Increase the scale. Increase the intensity, something like that. All that stuff works. So you get very complex looking stuff. And obviously you can adjust the color and everything to get it to look prettier, all that sort of stuff. But this is just really about the displacement. So in the next tutorial, this tutorial was, I guess, just the lecture and introducing all the techniques and the technical stuff that I'm doing to achieve the effect. The next tutorial, part 2 of this, is going to be an actual demo where I'm going to just make from start to finish an example of what I showed at the beginning of the video, just using a more complicated model like a human figure, and just walking through the whole process of actually getting it to, starting from nothing and getting it to something that looks cool. So yeah, I think that is about it. Hope I'm not forgetting anything. If I will, I'll edit it in afterwards. I just realized something that I forgot. So this whole time that I've been doing this, I was in direct lighting. Whenever you're working with volumes, you're going to want to be in either path tracing or one of the other render kernels that's not direct lighting. So you can put this to something reasonable while you're working. Just adjust these settings. Something like that. That's fine. And that will make this look a lot better. So that doesn't actually have much to do with the actual main primary subject matter of the tutorial. But if you were looking at this and wondering why the colors looked so sort of dull, that was why. It's because this was in direct lighting and it should be in path tracing.